Hello there, welcome back. Hope you're having a great day. Today's topic is going to be a little bit, a little bit different than what I normally talk about. And this is the live for you. If you have ever set up a system, declared you were going to do things differently now, you're going to be organized, you're going to do this and that, and then a week or two later, you've kind of fallen back to how things were before and you're not really sure what happened, you're not really sure why you couldn't keep that momentum going. That's a lot of what I'm going to be talking about today. And specifically, I'm talking about how to maintain your systems once you have them up and running. I think this is such an important topic because many people overlook this piece altogether. Like, it's not even on the radar. So if you are one of those people who has started the process of creating systems before and it just didn't last, a maintenance plan might be the missing piece for you. And that's what we're going to get into today. Why it's so important and what that looks like, what your maintenance plan should include, when you're going to do it, all those kinds of things. So stick around for that. If you are new here, I'm Jenna of J-Lane Virtual Solutions. I'm a systems and rhythms coach, and I help moms with businesses spend less time and less energy on the things that have to get done and create more time for the things that you really enjoy that bring you satisfaction and fulfillment. And we do that through simple systems and rhythms for both your home and your business. If you are watching, whether you're watching live or on a replay, I would love it if you would say hello in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. And also kind of tell me what your experience has been here. Have you tried systems before? Do you have some systems in your home or business that are working really well for you? Or have you tried some that didn't work out? And do you have a sense as to maybe why that was? I would love to kind of get into a chat about that. So I think there's a misconception out there that you have to naturally be an organized person or a systems person to have structure in your life and your business. I think there's also a little bit of negative connotation with the word structure, that it has to be very rigid. And this naturally organized sort of misconception only gets reinforced if you try to set up a system and it doesn't work. And especially if this has happened to you more than once, it's easy to start to think that it's you, that it just isn't your thing, it's not going to happen, and that is not the case. I recorded a live a while back. I will actually put the link to the video in the comments here. But several weeks ago, I talked about some other reasons why this could happen, why you might try to set up systems and it hasn't worked out. Pop this link in. And so some of those reasons were, maybe the system that you created wasn't the one you actually needed at the time. Maybe you were creating a system for an area of your life or your business that actually just wasn't a priority. It wasn't that important to you at that time. Or you might have been using strategies within that system that counter the way you naturally like to work and function, because there are a lot of different ways to approach organization and structure. And if you are plugging into someone else's plan that doesn't match you, then it's going to be a struggle. So another common mistake is thinking that your system is a one and done. You're going to go in there, you're going to spend the time setting it up, it's going to be running smoothly, and then you never have to do anything with it again. Your hands off, you're at the beach, having a cocktail or something while your business is going. And I think this is one of the things that we hear a lot, particularly with quote-unquote passive offers, courses, digital products, things like that, is that you set it up and then the money just rolls in. And while those types of offers can be more hands-off once they're set up, there is always some maintenance involved. And in any system in your business, there is some maintenance involved that I think we kind of skip over and no one really talks about that much. Because even the most streamlined, beautiful system is going to need some upkeep and a little TLC from time to time. So I like to think about this with the example of decluttering your house, right? So this is not something that I teach, but it falls really nicely in line with simplicity and streamlining. You know, if you declutter your house, you put in all of this time and effort up front. You clear it out, you get rid of stuff, you reorganize, and it looks amazing, right? Like that feeling of walking into a nice, like clutter-free, tidy room is amazing. But if you don't have some kind of way to keep that up, it's not going to be long before that clutter starts to creep back in, right? A few things get left over here. Some mail comes in and gets left on the counter here. Some kids drop some toys in the corner over here, right? So when you do that initial declutter, that's like setting up your base system, but you also need to have a plan for tidying it up, for making sure that it stays that way in the long term. Because the goal with our systems, rhythms, whatever kind of structure we're creating, is that it's going to support you in the long term, right? And that maintenance you do is going to be less time and effort than it would be if that system wasn't there in the first place. So yes, maintenance is a thing you need to do, but it's going to save you time and energy in the long run. And this is why when I go through my SOP framework, I believe I have that up on the blog, maintenance is the final step. It gets its very own step in that process because it is that important. Because without it, it's not going to last. The work that you put in is not going to last. So what does the maintenance stage actually look like? Just like every system is going to look a little different depending on the goal behind it, the tools you're using, the person who's implementing it, again, choosing strategies that work for you, every maintenance plan is going to look a little bit different as well. But there are some things that they're all going to have in common. And if you've heard me talk about the framework for creating a system, you're going to see a lot of parallels here when we're talking about your maintenance system. So I like to think about a system as having two parts. One is the process. Those are the steps that you're going to follow. With that is who's going to do those things, when are they going to be done, all right? We have the process over here, and then we have the tools over here. And those two parts combined make up your system. So similarly, when we're talking about your maintenance plan, we're going to look at both of those pieces again. So when we look at the process, you're going to look at the steps that you have lined out. Are these still the right steps? Or is this still the best way of doing this? Right? Are there parts that you've added? Are there parts that have been updated? Are there parts that you've been able to remove that you thought, you know what, that it's not really necessary anymore? Let's make sure that that's all updated, okay? And then have you found new tools or new ways to automate your process? So in the virtual assistant side of my business, I have done podcast support for quite a few clients. And one of the big pieces of that is writing up show notes. And in the very beginning, I don't know, 2 years ago, something like that, when I first started doing show notes, I would listen to the entire podcast episode. I would type up notes as I went. Then I would go back in and edit the notes. And let me tell you, it took forever. And so the process now looks a little different, right? I found a new tool. I use Otter to run a transcript on the episode, and then I edit from there to create the show notes. It cut the time in half. So have you found a new tool? Have you found some way to automate a part of the process? Let's make sure that's all updated there. All right? So that's kind of the steps. Then we're looking at, okay, who is doing these things? Are you still doing all of these steps? Have you outsourced or delegated any of these steps? And then is the timeline still working for you? Okay, does it take the same amount of time? Has it gotten quicker? Have you decided if you're working on a project maybe that involves someone else that you need to extend the timeline to allow for that communication back and forth? All right, looking through the process, just kind of like skimming, looking at the details and thinking, okay, is all of this still the best way that I know how to do whatever it is that you're doing? So I gave kind of the podcast example. In the home, one of the areas we can think about this is with meal planning and shopping. And for me and our family, this changes quite a bit from season to season. So here in Pennsylvania, our farmers market, our local farmers market, opens in June. And so during the farmers market season and during the growing season, the way that I plan meals and the way that I shop and source food changes from the rest of the year. And so that's a good touch point for me to go in and be like, okay, so I've been doing my grocery shopping on, let's say, Friday, but now I know that the farmer's market is going to be open on Saturday. How do I want to shift my plan? Do I want to go at different times? What am I shopping for where? Right? So a lot of what I'm talking about today, I think, is naturally going to go to the business side, but this is the same with any systems or rhythms that you're setting up in your home as well. So just kind of keep that lens on it as we go through. So we've sort of made it through the process piece at this point. We've looked at all of the steps, who's doing them, when are they getting done, can we streamline, all right? And we're setting the process over here. So now we're going to look at the tools. And this is kind of where that automation piece comes in a little bit more, like I was talking about with the Otter. If you have previously, or if you've added them, any automations set up in your system, part of your maintenance plan has to be going in and checking in from time to time to make sure that those automations are running correctly. Because it is not fun to, let's say you have a like a free checklist set up in your email. I use ConvertKit for my email. Let's say you have an automation set up where people fill out the form and they're supposed to get an email with their free checklist. And someone emails you and says, hey, I don't know what happened. I didn't get my checklist. So you go in to check it out and you find out that this automation has been broken for 2 months. Nobody wants that. Nobody wants to be in that situation. So part of the maintenance plan is going to be going in and checking on those automations and making sure that they're still live, making sure that they're working, right? And there might still be times, anytime we introduce new tech pieces, there's a possibility for it to fail. It seems to be much less likely than if we're a human doing it manually, not to mention the time it saves us to automate these things. But it's still something that we need to be aware of and need to keep an eye on. So that is the tools piece. What technology, what platforms, tools do you have running in the background that you need to check in on and might need some updates from time to time? So we've got the process piece of the system, we've got the tools piece of the system, and then the final part of the plan is, when are you going to do this maintenance? You've kind of identified what areas you need to check in on, what you're looking for. When are you going to do it? Because we know if it's not on the plan, if it's not on the calendar, it's probably not going to get done. It's probably going to get forgotten, right? So how often, when you do these tasks, again, it's going to be a matter of personal preference. But whatever you choose, I want you to set a recurring task. So if you know me, you know I love Trello. I use it for everything. I have monthly tasks set for some of these things on my dashboard. If you do not already have that, let me grab the link real quick. I have a free Trello template that you can download to help you map out your work week. And it includes slots for recurring monthly tasks. I actually just added a column to it a couple of weeks ago for plugging in the implementation steps for your Q2 plan. There are lots of great things where you can set reminders for yourself that will remind you automatically to do these things that are important to keep your systems running. So a lot of these things, I think monthly is a good rule of thumb. There are some things, especially if it's something that you're not using that often, you could even check in quarterly. If it's something super important to you, maybe you want to check in once every week or two. Again, it's going to depend on the system and your own preferences. So for example, one of the monthly tasks that I have is I use Zapier for some of my automations. If you haven't heard of Zapier, it's just, it's an app that links different platforms together. So for example, for one of my clients, when someone joins her program over here on her membership platform, Zapier sends me an email that says, hey, you need to go in and finish onboarding this person. So it just helps different platforms talk to each other. But I have a monthly task set up to go in and look at the Zaps I use, to look at the Zaps that my clients have set up, and you can really easily look and see what Zaps run and if they succeeded or if they failed. And so if you see that something failed, then you can start digging around and figure out where that disconnect happened. So that's one example. Let's see. Oh yeah, so for ongoing tasks, things that you're that are running all the time in the background or that you're doing on an ongoing basis, setting up that monthly, quarterly, whenever reminder is great. When you have something that's like a bigger project or a launch, something that maybe isn't like a one-time only, but let's say you do 3 launches a year. It's not something that you're doing all the time. I would recommend doing a sort of debrief at the end. So you probably had a launch plan, right? You probably had an idea of what was going to happen. Maybe you've been updating it as you go, but when the launch is over, it's a really good time to sit down and look at all the steps. Was there anything that we forgot? Was there anything that seemed messy? Was there something that seemed like it was not necessary? It was maybe a waste of time that we can take out for next time? Because believe me when I tell you, if your next launch is 3, 4, 5, 6 months away and you look at your plan, you are not going to remember in as much detail what happened this time. So go in, make those notes, make those updates, and then if you do it again in the future, you can replicate that system and continue building on it from there. Like, that's the beauty of setting up the system, is that it takes some effort up front, but then you can use that template, you can use that process over and over again and make small adjustments to it as you go, instead of reinventing the wheel every time. Having your next launch come up and starting from scratch and trying to pull it all out of your memory. We do not want that. That is way more energy than you need to spend. Okay, so similarly, if you do project-based work, so also a long time ago, giving a lot of examples from a long time ago today, I used to build funnels for clients. And so I would have a process that I would go through. I'd have a process for setting up the sales page or the landing page itself. And then I would have steps I would go through to set up, tags and forms and automations, so that instead of sitting down and being like, okay, what do I do next? What do I do next? I had a process in place, and then you notice, you learn things, like I would learn, okay, I am going to set up the tag and the form before the landing page because I want to be able to link it directly while I'm setting it up. So as you learn those little things about whatever it is you're doing, you make the tweaks to your process so that it becomes smoother and smoother every time that you do it. So that felt like kind of a lot. Just to kind of bring it all back around, the maintenance of your system should be a part of setting up your system the very first time. It is that important that it needs to be a part of the plan from the very beginning. All right? And your maintenance plan should include looking at the process and the steps that you're following. It should include checking in on any tools or automations that you're using. And you should have clear guidelines with yourself or your team about when you're going to go in and do those maintenance checks so that they don't get forgotten and so that you don't have that terrifying moment of realizing that something has been broken for months in the past. All right. So again, setting up a system takes time and effort up front to get it going in the first place, and you want it to be worthwhile. You want the system to support you in the long term. You don't want it to just fall apart a month or two in. You want it to be a support system for you, something that's going to make your life easier and reduce the stress that you have, reduce the energy that you're putting out rather than the other way around. So if you are feeling like things are a little jumbled, you know you need more structure around your home and your business, I would love to help you create systems and rhythms that help those core pieces run more smoothly with less time and effort. So together we'll figure out which systems will benefit you the most in this particular season of life and use my framework to map them out from beginning to end, including the maintenance mode, so that you can implement and continue using these for months or years into the future. Start by booking a 45-minute free strategy session with me. The link is in the comments. And on that call, we'll talk about where the biggest source of friction is, both in home and in business. What's the thing that's weighing you down and causing you the most stress? And what does it look like to create some structure and some more ease around that? So I would love to talk to you. If you watch this on the replay, I will be checking back in. So I would love to hear your experience with this, with trying systems out. Have you been able to maintain them? Have you struggled? Let me know in the comments. And I will see you right back here next week. Bye.